For time and the world do not stand still. Change is the law of life. This is always evident when we look at the world around us. The landscape, towns and cities are ever changing, evolving. Oude is a small market town in Belgium where change has been slow. A surprising amount of clues remain today of its ancient and medieval history. The name Oude is derived from the Old Germanic word loke, which means a bush on high, sandy earth. In 1093, a group of Augustinian monks settled here. It would have been a good place, a slightly raised area of ground surrounded by marshland. The agricultural efforts of the monks would have gradually reclaimed land from the marsh as they cultivated increasing crops. Much of their influence remains today, but Oude has a history which goes a lot further back to Roman times. Join me as GT visits Oude. Oude is in the modern-day country of Belgium, which itself has a fascinating history. Oude is in a region of Belgium known as Flanders and can also be described as being in the Flemish region of Belgium. The surrounding land is certainly very low-lying and rather flat, making the area very suitable for long, straight roads, something the Romans noticed. Indeed, a Roman road passes through the centre of Oude, and a section of this road is known today by the name Roman Street. We'll come back to the Roman connection in a short while. Stay around. Dominating the small town centre, the church we see today was rebuilt several times through the years, including after World War I, when much of the town was destroyed. The first records of a church here date back to 1119 and was part of the Abbey which Augustinian monks were establishing. After a while, the church was part used by the monks and part used as the parish church. During the French Revolution, the monks were driven out and the whole building then became the parish church. During World War I, much of the church was turned to ruins. After 1919, work began on rebuilding as close as possible to how the church originally was. By 1167, town status had been granted to Oude by Count Philips of Alsace. However, the town soon found itself being surrounded by conflicts between the Flemish and the French. For this reason, Oude was surrounded by a moat and an earthen embankment. 4 gates were built, one of which remains today and formed part of the eventual town walls, but we'll come back to this in a short while. During the Middle Ages, Oude built a reputation for textiles, but by the mid-1500s that was being replaced by cheese making. By 1578, things were getting difficult, with religious armies destroying many of the buildings, culminating with the Abbey church being burned to the ground in 1580. Buildings were reconstructed during many years until about 1782. But the French Revolution came along and the monks were again driven out, their buildings being either destroyed or turned over to other uses. Oude did suffer during both of the world wars. Many buildings had to be rebuilt in the 1920s. In the early 1700s, the abbot, who was the head of the abbey, had been away to Rome on business for quite some time. Whilst he was travelling, the monks set about building a Dove Cote in 1710 as a surprise present for when the abbot, patricious phrase, returned. In those days, a dove cote was an impressive status symbol, but it was more than just that. Inside, it contains nesting boxes for over 1,100 doves. It was a source of much-needed food. Monks would gather eggs from the nesting boxes, but of course the doves themselves were a food source. Talking of which, just off the marketplace and village green is this pond where fish were kept. The fish would have, of course, been another important food source. First recorded in 1404, the pond would also have served as a source of water in the event of any fires breaking out. Although we hear much about the monks of Low, they weren't the only group to settle here. The Tourist Information Centre and council offices might be located here today, but the Convent of the Poor Sisters of Newport dates from 1497. The nuns first arrived a few years earlier in 1492 and built their own community here. They were committed to taking care of not only plague victims, but also of all poor persons who were suffering illnesses. Aha! We found a British connection with this small Flanders town. Here in Britain, William of Low was sometimes known as William of Ypres. He was a self-styled count who attempted to seize power during a failed coup of 1127. He was banished to England, where he enthusiastically joined in with the Civil War. He was one of King Stephen's chief lieutenants and commanded a large contingent of Flemish soldiers. The grateful King of England elevated him to nobility. In later years, Count William founded a Cistercian abbey at Boxley. Just a handful of ruins remain today, just north of the M20 at Maidstone. If you think that the hereditary titles of Kings of England are complicated, things were no different elsewhere. William of Low was an illegitimate son. His mother was a wool carder and therefore a peasant. William's life story is rather complicated. He sounds like a good guy for founding Boxley Abbey, but he also plundered an abbey and turned two more to ruin. He became found to be not quite the good guy, and after blindness struck he returned to live here in Low. His existence was said to be quiet and pious. He died in Low in 1165, and a lead case containing some of his remains can be found in St. Peter's Church. In 1167, Count Philip of Alsace granted town status to Low. The town was surrounded by a moat, ditch and town walls, but we'll look at those in a short while. This building is today known as the Old Town Hall, although it was not the first town hall and certainly not the last town hall in Low. This town hall was finished in 1566 and replaced an older building which had fallen into disrepair. A clock and a carillon were housed in the tower. Carillons are very common in Belgium and the Netherlands. In simple terms, a carillon is a set of perhaps 24 tuned bells which are played from an array of levers similar to an oversized keyboard. Today, only the standard clock tower bell is heard from here. At the base of the bell tower is what appears to be a porch to give shelter to the main entrance door. Raised above ground level, this was actually where important announcements or proclamations were made to the townsfolk. When I visited, there was this rather attractive sculpture entertaining the crowds with his lute. It certainly added to the atmosphere of the place. The street leading past the cemetery is called the Old Egg Market. It stretches around and in front of this fine building, which was once the guest house of the former Abbey. Embedded in the street cobbles are the letters L-O-O. The town is known as Low today and is spelt with just one O, but this was the original correct spelling. Set back from the old egg market and at the end of a tree-lined, cobbled driveway is the Old Abbey Hotel. Of course, Belgium is very well known for its beers and ales, many of which are highly regarded ancient brews which first originated in abbeys. If you've ever dreamt of spending the night in a brewery, this might just be the place for you. As I've mentioned earlier, during the French Revolution, the monks of the abbey were driven out. In 1848, the Verland family took charge of this building and established the St. Louis Malt House and Brewery. St. Louis was the 13th century King Louis IX of France. This is a play on names, as the first of the Verland family to brew here was also called Louis. By the mid-1960s, the brewery had faced overwhelming competition from the ever-growing out-of-town and corporate brewing businesses. This building became a restaurant before going on to becoming a very popular hotel. Today, the hotel caters for a wide variety of clients. Classic car groups often stay over, attracted by the atmospheric surroundings. And of course, this is a great base for touring the battlefields and history of the Ypres salient. I have stayed over here several times myself. I've spent the day visiting the battlefields, cemeteries and memorials which litter the surrounding area. I've then eaten some amazing Belgian foods in the breathtaking town of Ypres. I've then visited my great-grandfather's grave, from where I could hear the nightly ceremony of the Menning Gate just 400 metres away. I've then returned to the Old Abbey Hotel for an evening stroll around this wonderful ancient and small town before enjoying a fantastic Belgian beer at the bar. Just outside the town boundary, across the canal and along Roman Street, is this windmill. If you get here at the right time, it can make for a fantastic photography location. This windmill was built in 1797. The impressive wingspan of the mill sails is some 24 metres. Used to grind grain and to produce oil, the mill was kept in operation until as recently as 1962 by Joseph Markey, from who the mill takes its name, Markey Molen. After falling into disrepair, it was fully restored in 1991 to 1992 and subsequently opened as a museum on Sunday afternoons. We're not quite at the pinnacle of curiosities in Low, but we're getting very close. When town status was granted to Low in 1167, work soon got underway on constructing a moat and wall around the town. If you walk along the footpath at the side of here, you will find a water-filled moat and a wall, which, although they may have been rebuilt, they do follow the course of the original town boundary. Sadly, most of the town walls have been lost many years ago. Originally, the town was only some 400 to 500 metres in diameter. There were 4 entrances or gates allowing access to the town. This small but stunningly romantic archway between 2 towers is all that remains of the original gateways. This was the West Gate. Unsurprisingly, it has been restored several times. Most recently in 1852 and 1991. You might notice that it straddles half of the roadway, and yes, traffic entering the town does pass to the right of the gate, but traffic leaving the town does pass through the gate. Amazingly, there is enough space for even buses and articulated trucks to pass through the archway. Whilst researching, I do notice that as of the 13th of August 2024, the archway has been temporarily closed due to damage, and traffic now alternates on the single lane around the towers. Now we reach the high point, the most curious curiosity in Low, and we don't have to walk very far. At the side of this ancient archway, you might have noticed a tree. Well, this isn't any old tree. It's a yew tree, and yew trees do have a reputation for living for a long time. It's not unusual to find yew trees which are as much as 1,000 years old. This yew tree is reputed to be some 2,000 years old. Let me just point out the street leading away from this tree, which is called Roman Street. This tree does have a name, Caesar tree. And this tree and its legend is so important that it is officially a National Monument of Belgium. The story goes that when Julius Caesar was on his way travelling to sort out us pesky British, he tethered his horse to this very tree and slept underneath the shelter of its branches. If you'd like to visit Low for yourself, I've left a link to our website in the description below with tons of useful information. If you've already visited Low, do let me know in the comments. Meanwhile, thanks for watching. It's now time for me to say goodbye, farewell, and as always, have a grand tour!